Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet back in Winnipeg, about to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show where we're going to take a crack at breaking down the Winnipeg Jets' third loss of the year. How's this go? Clearly, the Jets didn't have their A game. Now, let's take this as Renny's opportunity to take that lazy bit of analysis, which is always being spit up in the chat room here. And we're seeing it happen all over again. People are all over the Jets. And, it's not like there's any other teams in the league. This is, to me, a really good hockey game, right? Like two teams going at it. One of them's at the top of the division right now. One of them, we'll get into that, but young guys picked up JJ Paterka, picked up Brandon Tanev, picked up Nate Schmidt. Got a lot of those kind of depth adds. I've always said this before. If you've ever been on a hockey team before, a senior hockey team or something like that, you bring in three guys and you take out three guys. That's a huge swing, right? Like you can get to be a much better team. So, I think this is my quick way of saying the Utah Mammoth. They look like the real deal. The way they play hockey, their ability to score. I don't necessarily see Nick Schmaltz continuing to be what I think he's second in the league in scoring right now. I don't know that is sustainable, or Logan Cooley in that goal scoring pace that he had coming into this game. But I think that this is a year that we finally see, kind of like we saw from the Montreal Canadiens last year and the Ottawa Senators. Mark it on your calendars, folks. Renny thinks that that's going to be the turn that is made by the Utah Mammoth this season. So, yeah, come back to it. The whole analysis, didn't have their A game. Let's take that, crumple it up, throw it in the garbage where it belongs. And there couldn't be more perfect synergy to do that because it's Utah. If you remember, backtrack a year ago, Utah comes rolling into Winnipeg and they challenged the Jets, a great Jets hockey team that was having a phenomenal year, would go on to a President's Trophy year. And they walked in and they challenged the Jets at every single turn. And what did everybody say in the podcast? Jets didn't have their A game tonight. Lazy, trash analysis. Get that out of here. Renny told you way back in that first meeting last year, the Utah, back then, hockey club, this year, the Utah Mammoth and their coach, Andre Tourigny, know how to play the Winnipeg Jets. Give this man his due. Give this team their due. They know how to play a hard checking, suffocating Winnipeg Jets team that's going to make it a battle of attrition. The Utah Mammoth are up for battles of attrition, folks. They've got more scoring this year. They've got a little bit more veteran savvy. But just go back and look at all the games the Jets played against Utah last season, and now this one this year, and every one of those games, after Renny told you, all of you people who want to dismiss this and throw it out, and Jets didn't have their A game, this is the kind of team that knows how to play against the Winnipeg Jets. You know what? They're similar to the St. Louis Blues in the playoffs last year. A team that doesn't pop out at you necessarily on paper, but a team that knows how to play a certain brand of hockey, because that's what the Winnipeg Jets are, folks. They are the epitome of the team that has a brand of hockey they are committed, dedicated to, and execute over and over again as consistently as anybody else in the league. And that's what makes them great. These other teams are trying to be versions of that. St. Louis got so good at it by the end of last year that it took the hockey gods for the Winnipeg Jets to get past them in the first round of the playoffs. You take a look at what Utah does against the Winnipeg Jets. They challenge them. No easy neutral zone ice tonight. No easy zone exits. Every time they're challenging them up front, the Jets trying to lock them into their zone and do that thing where they swirl and swirl and swirl and don't give them the puck. Had some moments of that, some moments, I would say, but for the most part, the Utah Hockey Club knows how to break the puck out. They know how to beat the forecheck of the Winnipeg Jets. And what I saw was a swinging hockey game from one side to the other, where the Jets, for the most part, foiled the Utah Mammoth when it came to their efforts, and the Utah Mammoth foiled the Winnipeg Jets effort. Someone did say in here, and you know what? I'm going to I'm going to give the shout out here to Gift Guy, and I'm going to do it right off the bat. Flame and Comfort, hot take of the game, the good kind, where he says the little mistakes were costly. This is what hockey is. You just forgot about it because the Jets are such an ironclad team and have been for so long. They rarely make mistakes. This is what it looks like. This is what most hockey teams look like. You can't do this at the pace the Winnipeg Jets did it last year. And so mistakes pop up here and there. The other team capitalizes. It's a game of mistakes. How many times have you heard that? Gift Guy absolutely nailing that. And that's why Gift Guy is getting the Flame and Comfort hot take of the game right out of the gate. That's all I needed to do. Oh, I've seen enough, folks. That's your K&R hot take, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. When you get down there, you'll find it is one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. Folks, you don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside. Visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. And you know what? I forgot to tell you. It's like one of those times you're late for work and you just hop in and you crank the car and the radio is already blaring and you just start driving. Didn't even let you all know that I'm in the middle of the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive to the show here. Well into it. This is one of those things where, you make that phone call, through the car, through the fancy new technology of cars these days, when you're on the way home and you've already gone to the shopping, the shopping center, the grocery store, and you forgot to call the wife or the husband and ask them what they needed there. It's a little bit late, but don't worry. We're still in the middle of the drive. And I guess I just want to say it like this. Anyone out there who is trying to pawn off this game as the Winnipeg Jets, didn't have their A game. They're not here. This is the Winnipeg Jets against a team that is starting to the Winnipeg Jets, the Seattle Kraken, mimicking the Winnipeg Jets. This is what it looks like when teams come into town prepared to play the brand of hockey that the Winnipeg Jets play and cram it right back down their throat. Get used to it. You should get used to it because the Winnipeg Jets may have surprised people last year. They probably should. They finished fourth in the league the year before. They led the league at various points throughout that season. But last year, they go all the way to becoming the President's Trophy. They get noticed. Pete DeBoer talks about Scott Arniel, thinks he's the best coach in the league. You can see what they did with their power play. You can see what they did with their penalty kill. Folks, people are tuning into the Winnipeg Jets, not just because they're checking, to see what they need to prepare for this game. They're leading the league in the regular season. Other teams are looking at the Winnipeg Jets saying, what are they doing? And how do we do that so that we can get in the playoffs as well and see what happens when we get in there? Andre Tourigny has been doing it for years. I thought we saw it from Seattle the other night. But if you are trying to, if you need to, and I've never understood the compulsion to just always think that your team is up here, everyone else is down here, and if they lose a game, it's because they didn't have it. This was a good hockey game tonight. Two teams going back and forth, two teams mirroring each other. Give the due to the Utah Mammoth. They played last night, had a little bit of a barn burner of a game, came here and pulled it off again. If there's a mistake, I think the Winnipeg Jets, other than, little micro mistakes that cost them during the game, if there's a mistake that I thought that the Jets made, it's in that third period that's when they're supposed to be taking over the game. That's when a tired hockey club who played the night before is supposed to not have the legs. And, it's one thing that happens in the ice. It's one goal. That's 3-2. All of a sudden, that's the difference in the game. I don't think it's just as simple as that. To me, there was never that concerted effort by the Winnipeg Jets to elevate their game and try and run the Utah Mammoth out of the rink. I think the Jets, if anything, were maybe resting on the laurels of their system a little too much and not making that mad dash push that we saw right at the end of the game, and it cost them. I think that what we're seeing here is a little bit more of what we're going to see from the Jets this year. Hard to do what they did last year for 82 games. I think you're starting to see here and there, especially against teams, and this is the important part because Calgary was that and came close twice against the Jets. Teams willing to grind, come in and play the Jets and grind, they're going to challenge the Jets this year. It's going to be a different year than last year in that regard. Teams are going to be ready. The Winnipeg Jets need to be a little bit more ready in the third period of this game if they want to walk away with a game like that. That is the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive to the show right before we bring in Kenya. I'm pulling up into his driveway right now, getting ready to yell at him to come out and hop in. And wouldn't it be nice if I was doing that in a 2025 Tacoma truck? I could do it because this month the Toyota Get In and Go event is on now at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Finance the 2025 Tacoma truck from 5.89% with up to a 1% loyalty rate reduction and a $1,500 accessory credit. But hurry, the offer ends very soon, folks, October 31st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive. All right, the Toyota Get In and Go event about to end, but Ken is going to get in and go here, and we're just getting started with that. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business, folks. Here comes Kenny. Ken, there's the guy down at the arena. Sorry, I didn't make it down there today, traveling as I was in Washington yesterday. I think it's worth a conversation, Ken. I'm going to tease it right now. But Tom Wilson doing very much the same thing as Mark Scheifele has done since he felt he was snubbed. I guess he didn't feel he was snubbed, but definitely devastated when he didn't make Four Nations last year and has been showing out ever since to try and make Team Canada this year. And I thought we might as well bring Macklin Celebrini into the conversation because he is on fire right now. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation. We haven't had much of it yet, but Scheifele's start, where it puts him in terms of trying to make the Four Nations and the competition that he's feeling from a bunch of guys who were not on that Four Nations team pushing to try and make the Olympic team. That's going to be good. All these players we're talking about are looking good, but not as good as Ken Wiebe right now, folks, because he's got that Vittorio look to him, that Vittorio Rossi look that you only get from heading down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. You know what to do. You got to go down there. You got to walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right, and you'll look like this guy right here, not this guy right here. Ken, you were in the building. Seemed like a good road game for the opposition on this night. What did you take away from the Utah Mammoth?
Yeah, fun game, Sean. Hope you travel went okay. It was a fun game. First period, exciting, up tempo. Not a ton of grade A's. From where I was sitting. The folks at Natural Stat Trick may have thought differently. But yeah, it was a fun game. Really good pace. The Utah Mammoth did not look like a team that were playing. On consecutive days. Both teams were 3 and 4, but. Jets did generate 7 high danger chances in the first, 17-9 in the game at all in 5-on-5 situations. But it was just a fun game. I mean, we've been watching Utah, and we had a conversation. Kevin Sawyer and I had a conversation with Andre Tourney before the game here. He sees some parallels. Like the Mammoth are sort of where the Jets were before they got or on their way up, right on the rise. Yep. Ton of homegrown talent. They weren't always committed to defending, but. Andre Tourney has continued to just impress upon them that the importance of them taking the next step will not happen without taking that step defensively. And, yes, they still gave up some chances. Vanacek had to play well, but I love the way the Mammoth played. It was a no excuses game for them, and they did to the Jets what the Jets have done to so many teams. We can say whatever we want, but they forced the Jets into making those errors. Yes, they're self-inflicted wounds. That's true. But usually those self-inflicted wounds happen sometimes because of what the other team is doing. So for me, I give the Mammoth a lot of credit, Sean. I mean, yes, The second goal is an easily preventable goal. People can point to the line change, but that puck should get in deep there. That puck has to get in deep. Then you're not having the schmozzle that led to the 2-on-1, perfect pass and, play by Carcioni. Really nice goal there. Yamamoto's setting it up, but that puck's got to get in deep. I mean, these are things the Jets, Sean, you remember the conversation with John Cooper. John Cooper talked about how the Jets don't beat themselves. Today they beat themselves, but they were beaten by a team that forced them into making mistakes. That's how I see it. On the game-winning goal, Jets got caught puck watching. That's not what the Jets do. The Jets are very aware of their circumstances, of their scenarios. They know that, when a guy's coming off the bench, they had the play basically shut down in the corner, physical on Peterka, yet there's Logan Cooley coming away with it. And Logan Cooley is finding one of the deadliest shooters in the NHL. There's a guy in the vicinity, but he's not being checked. Dylan Guenther is wide open in the slot. He scores his 4th game winner out of 8 wins for the Mammoth. Outstanding job by the Mammoth to take advantage of a couple of critical errors. The Jets had an outstanding first period, Sean, and we'll get to it in a second. But Scott Arniel was very sour after this game. He's there's a journey for beginners. Too many mistakes for the oldest team in the league. Scott Arniel was frustrated, Sean. He said, "This is game 9. We can't be making these kind of mistakes," and this is always the issue, right? So you have a team that has established such a high standard. There's a lot of turnover. We know that, but the Jets are almost a month into the year, Sean. Game 10 is going to be played on Tuesday in St. Paul against the Minnesota Wild. That's almost 1/8 of the season, right?
Yeah, over 10%.
Sorry, 10%. You're getting there. You're getting close to 10% of the year. And again, you understand that there are going to be mistakes in a hockey game, but it's the preventable issues. It's the self-inflicted wounds are usually preventable, but that's something that we haven't seen that much from the Jets in the last 4 years almost. And at least for the last 3 years. Yes, we know in the second half, the Jets had the, late collapse almost, if you will. But this is not what we're used to seeing, these uncharacteristic errors. But you need to clean those things up if you're the Jets because, as Gabe Vilardi, the one thing I didn't point out in the conversation with Vilardi, John Abbott, our pal from Calgary, the play-by-play guy on the TV side, Sean, he said when he was listening to Gabe talk, he said that's how the Flames feel as a whole group. Gabe's like, well, it may sound harsh, but I don't feel sorry for them, just like they don't feel sorry for me. So no team in the NHL is feeling sorry if the Jets are not at their standard or if they're making errors that are ending up in the back of the net. So to me, that's something that is, easily preventable and or the Jets have the ability to clean that up fairly easily. But if it was that easy, they wouldn't still be doing it in game 9, right? So that's the other part of the equation, which is interesting. But yeah, the Jets just aren't playing at that level. And yeah, we know, and this goes back to, and people hate to talk about it, but Sean, this goes back to 2018. Days after the Jets were eliminated, Paul Maurice stood at that podium and said, "Hey, you don't just get to start at the Western Conference Final. You have to start at game 80, at game 1 of 82. You have to do a better job of, starting on time, all of those things." And, today Scott Arniel just expressed a lot of frustration with the second period. He was thrilled with the first. He called it a perfect period. You had all your guys going. There wasn't a parade to the penalty box. Jets were checking with their feet, staying above pucks, all of those things. And then in the second period, it was nowhere to be found. And Sean, Scott Arniel, outwardly upset and frustrated, said, maybe we thought it was going to be too hard to do for 60 minutes. And, that's kind of an example of, going to the whip metaphorically. He didn't like it. I'm sure he let his players know before he let the media know. But, that's something that the Jets have worked hard to be a hardworking team, and it's in their DNA. But right now, they have not played one 60-minute game in 9 games. And that's a problem, Sean. That's a problem. You can't coast by and, I'm not saying it's not back to snake charmer hockey, but against good teams, you got to play 60 minutes. And yes, there's going to be ebbs and flows within a game, but the Jets haven't done a good enough job of forcing their opponents to make errors the way that they have previously. And that was on display today again.
I'm going to give an early Pristine Roofing wake-up call to the Winnipeg Jets on this, because I think they're getting a little bit of one here. And just before I get into the explanation of why, let's kind of engineer this backwards and just give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. He'll tell you exactly what needs to be done. You can also call Pristine Roofing at 204-237-7663. Get them down to your place. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be happy that they did, or that you did. I would say this with Scott Arniel. Now, listen, you would always, as a coach, have the highest expectations for your team, right? And for the most part, your expectations should rise above what your team's capabilities are, right? What's the old saying? People have a tendency to meet the expectations that you set for them, right? So in a sport where you haven't won a cup, you got to set those expectations higher and higher and higher. Scott Arniel has high expectations, right? He's upset. He's talking about the mistakes being made. He's saying they're 10 games into the season. The fact of the matter is, and the Pristine wake-up call in this is that this is the NHL. This is the daily grind of the NHL. Last year, and every year that a team wins a President's Trophy, is such an anomaly that it kind of bends your reality into, what happened here on this night. Like, you can say about the Jets, okay, well, the mistake on the power play, Fleury doesn't come off the boards. He gets stuck in no man's land. It allows Sergachev to walk right down Main Street and take that shot. That's not us. We don't allow those kind of goals. That's not what we do. Well, Mark Scheifele's goal is the exact same goal, right? It's basically a collapse of the penalty kill by the Utah Mammoth. They give him way too much space. He skates down Main Street, rips it into the back of the net. So it's not like what we're watching here is one team that is unbelievably mistake prone and another one that is just doing its job and coming out with this. This is hockey. We just forgot that this is what hockey looks like because the Winnipeg Jets went out and won 2 Jennings trophies back-to-back and don't allow teams to get shots on their goaltender. But that level of hockey that they need to play to do that for 2 straight seasons with playoffs sandwiched in between those seasons and one before those seasons, and their season before that, they were pretty good too. They've said it before. It's a high effort to execute the Winnipeg Jets system. Now, I'm not saying they won't reach that, but I'm saying last year, again, was an anomaly. To be able to reach that level and stay at that level as long as the Winnipeg Jets did throughout 2 regular seasons is insane. Back-to-back Jennings trophies is insane. And that's why we're skewing this or looking through these lenses of, oh my God, the Jets made 2 or 3 mistakes and it ended up in the back of the net. Who is this team? I don't recognize them. Well, you know who they are. They're mortal. They're mortal in a year where they're coming off this, and they've twice now had unbelievable regular seasons that have set the rest of the league on fire. And I don't think that you can expect that all the time. Now, I'm not saying the Jets won't be a leader this year, but we've talked about it on this podcast, Ken, so far this year. Jets schedule, a little bit soft out of the gate. They've been winning games because, what have I said? Their baseline standard is higher than a lot of teams' top end, like where they just kind of walk out and randomly play the game is higher than a lot of teams out there that you'll see in the NHL. Well, what happens now, though, is when you play that style, and I feel like we've seen that game 4 times in a row now, Ken, because there were 2 nail-biters against the Calgary Flames that they pulled out. Then there's a loss to the Seattle Kraken, and there's a loss to the Utah Mammoth. Now, let's not get lost in this, the fact that the Winnipeg Jets, I just came from a game where one of the supposedly best teams in the East got beat 7-1 by Ottawa. When's the last time you saw that happen to the Winnipeg Jets? They were in this game tonight right until the last bell. They were in the game against Seattle pretty much right until the last bell, minus some empty net goals. It's not like they're entirely falling apart. Yes, they're making mistakes. Do they want to clean those up? No doubt. Could you be a lot sharper? For sure you could, but the vast majority of teams can, and a lot of successful teams are okay with not being sharp at this time of year. God, it was the Colorado Avalanche and Taves on their team last year who said to me they don't expect to round into form until Christmas time. We don't know what we have in this room. We'll figure it out by Christmas time. Doing this for 82 straight games, you can't expect that. I don't think this is alarm bells for the Winnipeg Jets. It's a coach's job to say, we're not at our details. We need to get going there. It's a right statement to say the Jets lose a game because of making mistakes here tonight. I think it's also important to point out that what we've seen from the last couple of years is an anomaly, and very good teams make it through the year having games that look like this. In fact, very good teams go through the year and have games that look like complete no-shows. And sorry, we didn't even show up to play the system here tonight. So I don't see this as a panic. I see this as the Jets got beat by a really good team. I see this as a Jets team that has gotten used to the baseline being enough on some nights. And if there's any issue, it's that the Jets need to look around and say, okay, 10% into the season, maybe we need to start building on the baseline right now. We're not going to get away with this for that long, even with the schedule that we have. Time to ramp things up a little bit. That's what you're hearing from their coach. I'm expecting them to do that. But none of this is a panic. None of this is the Jets aren't the Jets of last year. This is the Jets realizing that you don't win the Stanley Cup in October and you can lose it. But they're 6-3, folks. They're not losing the Stanley Cup in October. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, even too, Kevin Sawyer and I also spoke briefly with Nate Schmidt before the game, and Nate shared what it was like for him to go to the Florida Panthers, where there would be some nights like the ones you talk about, and Nate talked about it going into the playoffs. The Panthers were 2-7-1, and people were like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with the Panthers?" And he's like, "Well, they looked around and were not bothered at all." So. But the difference between teams like the Panthers and the Avalanche, Sean, those teams have already been to the top of the mountain. So yeah, I think it's a little bit easier for them to say, yes, we'll find our game in November. But I agree with you. I mean, this is not panic at the disco territory. Jets know they can be better. They have a lot of things they're still sorting through and trying to work out. And they'll continue to work on those things. But, I actually don't mind that Scott Arniel expressed some frustration, probably first with his team and then in the media. They're about to go into a place in Minnesota where they're also sour. I mean, you mentioned Celebrini overtime winner today. Wild have been very much up and down and not really, at their game. So the Jets don't want to be letting this spiral, right? That's the big thing. So, they've lost 2-3 on home and they don't want that. Josh Morrissey talked about it. Last year, the Jets were very dominant at home. So you don't want to be, accepting of, they're 3-3 at home right now. So they need to be, sorry, not 3-3, 3-2, I guess. Overall. So no, they got 9. So they're 3-3. They played 3 road games. Anyways, they got to be better at home. But again, these things are preventable. They're easy to clean up. And the Jets are going to find their game. It's just a matter of buckling down a little bit more. They're a little bit in flux in the middle 6, Sean. I like the fact that Morgan Barron got, when the Jets went down to 3 lines in the third, I like that Morgan Barron was the guy going over the boards with Jonathan Taves and Alex Iafallo. There was only one shift, I think, but I liked that idea. Right now there are certain players on the Jets that aren't working at peak efficiency. And like you said, they need to be operating at peak efficiency in, February, March, April, May, potentially in June. But they're going to want to raise that standard, as you mentioned, because it's going to be getting tougher. I mean, we talked about it earlier. The schedule is what it is. But so this is what I don't like about the whole Jets are playing a bunch of easy teams because they didn't make the playoffs. Well, the Utah Mammoth didn't make the playoffs last year, but they're the best team in the Western Conference at 8-2 and 7 wins in a row. So, but at the same time, they're going to have to raise their level, and that's got to start. They were so good. One of the reasons they were dominant in the division last year, they were excellent in the Central. They were very good in that stretch. And again, I agree with what you say, Sean, in terms of the mistakes happening on both power plays. The bigger difference for me was that the Scheifele goal came after the Jets had basically been in their end for 1 minute and 57 seconds. It came with 3 seconds left, whereas the Mammoth goal comes after a clean lost draw. And, the Jets just didn't get to where they needed to get to. But you're right. I mean, these are mistakes. teams capitalize on mistakes. It is a mistake-filled game. And if you try to minimize your mistakes, generally you have a little bit more success. But overall it was a fun game. I mean, that's the beauty of it. This was a fun game. There's going to be more fun games played between the Jets and Mammoth. And I'm looking forward to more games between these two teams. I think there could be a fun rivalry that gets going here
with a
based
lot
on
of
the
the
maturity
ex-Jets
level.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like you've got guys who used to be there before. You like we talked about teams that are I think kind of borrowing from the Jets culture, right,
sure.
and bringing guys in and trying to establish that, and guys absolutely love to go in and hang losses on their ex teams, right? And I know Nate Schmidt has probably moved on, and I mean, two of those guys won a cup with another team, so maybe when they think of their ex-girlfriend, it's the one who lives down in Florida that they think of more often than the one in Manitoba. But I mean, those players, if you're talking about, I think Kevin Stenlund, Brandon Tanev, and a guy like Nate Schmidt. Now, Nate Schmidt, clearly his best years were in Vegas, but those two first ones and rediscovered as well, Nate Schmidt, were kind of made in Winnipeg, right? Like Kevin
Yep.
Stenlund is, a player that goes to Winnipeg and suddenly is valued around the league. Probably more so than before he came to Winnipeg. Same thing. Brandon Tanev comes in, becomes a player that the league kind of falls in love with. Nate Schmidt, things had fallen apart for him in Vancouver, comes here to Winnipeg, resurrected, and then takes that, kind of dips again and goes and is resurrected once again. Lots of lives for that guy. But I do think that what we're going to see is that team is, we're finally seeing that evolution. I don't know if Chicago's there. Funny thing is, they're 2 points behind the Jets, game in hand. The Chicago Blackhawks coming and rolling into town, all of a sudden looking to take on the Jets and knock them down into a wild card spot, as early it is and as ridiculous as it is to be talking about that. But the changing face of the league, the Macklin Celebrinis, like, maybe even Anaheim, the way things are going, and Joel Quenneville going there and them adding a lot of established guys, we could be seeing the turn. I know that I covered a team a lot in Ottawa, and I was there this weekend, covered a team last year that was trying to make that turn. You can kind of see them growing up before their eyes. And I can tell you, they made the playoffs last year, and it's right back to it this year. They've stumbled out of the gates, and it's hard to get that level to where you want it to be. And Ottawa didn't think they had it. They think they've discovered it the last couple of games. Sure looked like it when they hung that 7-1 victory on the Washington Capitals. Not to talk about them too much, but the point being, the Jets are this team that other teams are trying to get to in their consistency in the regular season. And for most teams, it looks like this. It's up and down, it's up and down. And even the really good teams sometimes get there and then they fall down after a bit. The Jets have been up here. They've been up here for a long time. It makes sense that they would maybe make a little bit of a dip this year and we'd start to see some cracks in your game. Not because they're not committed to that game, not because, like the Florida Panthers last year, when Nate Schmidt was talking about how they'd have these stretches of hockey where they look bad and people were thinking it's over for that team. When you become that established team, I think there's that little bit of, we don't need to be world beaters every single night. We can win a lot of games without having to put too much in it. But what we do have is the ability, when it's time, to lock into our best game. The question always with the Jets in the playoffs is their best game good enough? But I do think that for the most part now, the Jets, for years not being able to get to their best game in the playoffs, have been able to kind of rise to that level and definitely maintain it in the regular season. Ken, you were talking about players that don't quite have it yet. I'm thinking, well, nothing other than, trying to take you down a notch or two, which I'm always trying to do, that I love doing more than that, is maybe patting myself on the back. But early season analysis, we talked about this. Jonathan Toews, we've said, is kind of around where we thought he would be. If you go back and you rewind it, and I won't even say it, go back and rewind and look at Rennie's preseason analysis on what I expected from Gus Nyquist.
Yep.
Sounds like that's kind of coming to fruition, what I thought. What are you seeing from Gus Nyquist 10% of the way through the season? I'm not seeing him meeting the high expectations that the Winnipeg Jets had for him returning to the kind of season he had 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, by the numbers, Nyquist has 3 assists and 9 points. So, I mean, that's, closer
in 9 games.
In 9 games, he's got 3 assists. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think they would like a little bit more production. I think that's fair. You know, mostly second power play. Right now, I think the middle six is very much in flux still. Nikita Chibrikov was in the lineup for a second game. I was wrong on that one. I thought that would be a Parker Ford outing today, Sean. Chibrikov, one shot attempt, no shots on goal. He did have 2 hits. He had 2 giveaways. He had 2 minor penalties, again, one of them coincidental, which, again, I've got no problem with Nikita Chibrikov getting into it with JJ Peterka on the way to the bench. And that's a good trade for the Jets, Peterka for Chibrikov. So get involved, get under the skin of the opponent. He also did take a high sticking minor in the game. But again, my feelings on Chibrikov are still the same. I think he will benefit. I understand why he's up there and why he's getting a chance. I think he will benefit from going down to the Moose and playing heavy minute games and getting a lot of offensive puck touches. I just don't see him being he's not a middle six NHLer at this instant. I think he can become one and will become one. But right now, to be one of the best teams in the Central Division and Western Conference, I don't think Chibrikov is quite at that level yet. I think he has all the tools to get to that level, but I think the sooner that he gets assigned to the Manitoba Moose to start rebuilding his game and getting, he seems confident. Sure, he needs puck touches to be more confident. He needs to be skating 18 to 20 minutes a game so that he gets his legs. He's coming back from a massive knee injury. He's moving around fine, but to be an impactful player, I think he's got to get more reps and more ice time. And right now he's not playing at a level, high enough to warrant that ice time. So he's a 10-minute and 15-second player at the NHL level. So for me, I think the Jets are going to be looking at Parker. I said it last game. I'll say it again, and I may be wrong, and that's fine. I think Parker Ford's in the game against the Minnesota Wild, Sean, especially after all the things that Arneal said about compete and work ethic and all those things. I think Parker Ford's a guy that's going to be in on the fourth line. In terms of Nyquist, yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more from him. I think that's fair. I went up to Nyquist the other day, asked how the transition was going. He's starting to feel more and more comfortable, but it hasn't related directly to, popping points in here at a high level. I think he's made a bunch of nice little plays. But again, he's not a fast player and he's not a physical player. So when you're not doing either one of those things, you got to be very good defensively and you're going to have to chip in some offense somewhere. So I think he has another level to reach. And again, we've said this from the beginning. I'm not certain the Jets expected 50 to 60 points from Nyquist, even though he had 75 2 years ago. But I know they weren't expecting a 26 to 28 point season either. So I think he's going to have to elevate his game to reach that level. So to me, I think he's skating okay, but I think he has another level to reach.
I think so. My take on Nyquist and what I've seen so far right now is he's one of the players that asked a question earlier in the season about the Jets system and the kind of taxing nature of it, right? Like, so this isn't just, when you talk about older players coming to the Winnipeg Jets, and they got older on purpose this year. You had Jonathan Toews, you had Gustav Nyquist. You're getting older. You're prioritizing experience. Luke Shen is another guy. Now I know that Luke Shen, and I know that people are the chat room's going at Luke Shen on this night here tonight. There's been games where he's absolutely shut things down, blocking shots. He's fit. This was, not one of the ones that you would put on the highlight reel to tell that story. But I can understand how the Jets made that move and thought, okay, we can do this again. But you're asking a lot for older players of that age to come in and play in the NHL period, right? To continue playing at that level. I mean, watched Alexander Ovechkin last night play in that game. This is a player still has that unbelievable ability to score. He's still dangerous, but a lot of times, a lot of turned over pucks, a lot of inabilities to win races and things like that. That's just the nature of getting older in this league. Asking players 35 and above to play in the NHL right now is a big ask. But when you're asking them to play on the Winnipeg Jets and play the Winnipeg Jets system, it is a huge ask. It's a massive ask because it's hard. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of details. So what makes the Winnipeg Jets a good team when it's working is you've got guys like Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and, Cole Perfetti when he's in the lineup, and Nikolai Ehlers when he was here. Josh Morrissey, clearly one of those guys. Neil Pionk is one of those guys when he's alongside Sandberg. You've got these players who are very, very good at playing that system and then going above and beyond the system. Morgan Barron has been a good example of that this year, playing suffocating defensive hockey and then turning it up ice and pouncing on it, playing here's the system, now play above it. What I'm seeing from Gus Nyquist is a player who's doing a good job playing the system. I don't see him stepping out of it and stepping up out of it. I don't see him. I think what we're seeing from Gus Nyquist is his hands are full with the defensive hockey and the Winnipeg Jets brand of hockey, and he's doing his job with those hands full. But to be able to step above and beyond that, like you were saying, he's got the 3 assists. What I'm not seeing is what we saw from Gabe Vilardi, right? Okay, give him some time. He's going to break through. He'll be just fine. When it goes in for him, it'll go in for him, and then the ball will start rolling. I'm not seeing that from Gus Nyquist. I'm not seeing a massively dangerous offensive player. The Jets bringing him in was an attempt at rebuilding the second line offense. Cole Perfetti's not here, so we got to wait until he gets back, until we kind of get a look at what the Winnipeg Jets' overarching vision was to try to rebuild that line. Jonathan Toews looking like he's going to be fine, especially if he keeps building his game. Keep in mind, there's always the potential that he gets tired in the middle of the season and things tail off. But right now, on the expectation that he's going to continue building, looks like we're going to like where Jonathan Toews is going. But right now, the ability to try and replace Nick Ehlers and that dangerous offense that he brought in and that support that he brought in, that someone was pointing out, someone in the chat room, sorry, I'm not giving credit to the name specifically, but said there needs to be more secondary scoring. I think it was Jefferson Peters, more secondary scoring, helping out the likes of Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. Sure. The Jets, I think, expected and thought and took a bit of a risk that they were going to get that from Gus Nyquist. I think it's pretty clear at this stage they're not getting that, and I'm not sure how much easier it gets when the rest of the league, how I feel about the Jets. They get a little bit of a head start because they commit to the game earlier than other teams, and then other teams start rounding out. The hockey only gets harder, so the level of difficulty goes up. So Gus Nyquist is going to have to catch that level of difficulty as it climbs and surpass it to start being the kind of player offensively that I think the Winnipeg Jets thought he could be. To me, it's a tough ask, and like I'd said, the first 10% of this season shows very, very much towards what I had thought was going to happen with Gus Nyquist heading into this season.
Yeah, I would just say quickly, today I thought he was a little bit more effective. He had 4 shots on net. He's only had 12 shots on goal in 9 games, Sean. 4 of them came today. He had 2 hits and a block shot. So I would say today was a little bit more of what they would have expected, I think, but he's got more to give for sure.
Yeah,
and he's got to give
score.
more. He's got to give more. And again, this is not a one-person thing, and you're not saying that it is. We're just looking at him.
No way.
The Jets were not expecting Ehlers' production to be met by Nyquist. It was always going to be a community effort.
Him in the aggregate,
right? And it was
from Moneyball.
Fetty was going to be leaned on heavily to level up his own game to make up some of that offense, and he hasn't been available to even start doing that. So. That's also part of it. And just quickly too, for folks who might have missed it, Scott O'Neill, or yesterday, Adam Lowry skated in a regular jersey and is, inching towards a comeback for, getting back into the lineup. And Scott didn't come out and say it, but the way he intimated that discussions would be happening with the player and management about a potential next step, because the Jets wouldn't be practicing much in the next couple of weeks, sounded like they're maybe considering a conditioning stint with the Moose, Sean. This is how I interpreted it, and others did as well. So, we'll see what happens over the next little while. The Moose are actually in Tucson, but then home next weekend, Sunday, Monday. So even if it's just for practice, we saw this with Gabe Landeskog, and I know it's a way different situation and scenario, but even if it's just going down to the Moose to practice a little bit more, that could be potentially on the table in the coming days here. I guess we'll obviously monitor that closely.
What a great opportunity for the young Jets prospects on that team to get the
Yeah.
big C down there, the guy who has really established the culture that the Winnipeg Jets have followed, and just get like a taste of that culture in the dressing room for a little bit. I mean, even if it's like 2 or 3 games or 7 or 8 days in total or something like that, those are the kind of things that a player like, Jagger could like walk away from that, and it's like, okay, that's what we are trying, that's the mold we're trying to fit. Nothing but positives for the organization, I think. And I kind of love those stories of the, when Gabe Landeskog last year came up and was with the
Right.
Colorado Eagles for a while. I thought that was phenomenal. Anyways, going back to Nyquist, the point you were making, he's doing the things, he's playing the system, he's got to score, and you can score a great rate with the Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, renewing like I'm going to be doing right away, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. And that's what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. And Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out while we're at it here?
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Real LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Mark Scheifele, Olympic conversation. Just wanted to touch on this quickly.
Sure.
Someone said something the other day, and I know I said it on the show. I wanted to make sure it was very anecdotal when I talked about Jonathan Toews and said I'd noticed there was a number of times this season when the Jets would get socked into their own zone. We're not used to seeing that happen. And I'd look, and in that time of getting socked in, I'd look and I'd see Jonathan Toews was on the ice while it was happening. I wish I would have wrote down the time during the game, but it happened once. It wasn't an extreme one, but there was a stretch of time there where one of the oppositions just went and socked the Jets in and was just working on him. And I looked, and again, I thought it was Jonathan Toews, it was Jonathan Toews who was out on the ice at that time. I guess I would say it like this. We're seeing him put up the points. We're clearly seeing him dominate in the face-off dot. His value is extremely strong for the Winnipeg Jets. I want to make it clear I'm not trying to pick on a guy with anecdotal things. I just think what you're seeing is that game as it builds is, kind of like a puzzle, and there's missing puzzle pieces. And I think every once in a while now, that's a bit of the missing puzzle piece, that when Jonathan Toews gets on the wrong side of the play and he's out on the ice, and I don't want to blame it all on Jonathan Toews, it's his line mates, it's the defense, it's everybody. But I think that's part of what it looks like to be gone from the NHL for 2 years, that when you get behind the play, it's tough to work your way and catch up and get in front of the play. And so that ends up being, socked into your zone every now and then. I think those are just symptoms of a player that hasn't been in the league for a couple of years. That's the point I was trying to get across, because I did have some people message me about it. I just wanted to clarify on that. Okay, Ken.
Very quickly, Matt Hyman has one question here. Would Lowry take up a roster spot, or is there an IR exception? Well, right now, Lowry is a non-roster player on IR. So, but either way, to me, this is not a consideration. I don't think. If the Jets need the roster spot, they send down Lambert or whoever's not playing from that trio of forwards that they aren't they're only using one of the three on most nights. So I don't think that's an issue.
Hand it to our boy Ken Wiebe. He's got us covered all the way around, whether it's NHL, AHL. He's got the questions answered. Wraps the information all the way around like a big old headband, which means it's time to turn this into a Sean. Ken, I got so excited there. I hit the button. I hit the play button a little early. Hopefully, Glenn and Jonna at Myers Pharmacy are as excited as I am because we know they're always waiting for the headband to appear in the show. You'll be excited if you go on down and talk to the folks at Myers or give them a call on the phone because, as we know, Myers delivers anywhere within the city. So if you have any supplement needs, any health food needs, or any prescription pharmacy needs, they're the people to give a call. Make sure you tell them Kenny and Renny sent you in your direction when you do. Okay, Ken. Mark Scheifele, I'll preface this. Macklin Celebrini is tied for 10th in scoring in the NHL right now with Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets. Tom Wilson is leading the Washington Capitals in scoring. I did a story on him, and it sounded very much like Mark Scheifele. Extremely disappointed when he didn't get the tap on the shoulder for Four Nations. He didn't take it as a slight. He refused to allow it to be a negative, didn't check out, watched every game of the Four Nations, and has been working every game, every day, every practice since, trying to earn his way back onto that Four Nations club. A guy he threw a massive hit. Was it Ridley Grieg, I think, that he blew up in that game that I covered yesterday? He's had a lot of big hits this year. 6'4", 220 pounds, leading their team and scoring a point per game player. I mean, it's clear what he brings to the table. Macklin Celebrini, what he brings to the table is the fact that he's 19 years old and he's 10th in NHL scoring on a team. I mean, he doesn't have Kyle Connor on his line. I think that San Jose has done a good job getting Tyler Toffoli, an established guy there who can still pull the trigger, a young guy like Will Smith, who those two can grow together, a la Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane. I still don't think he's got as much going for him as a guy like Mark Scheifele has. So I'm getting to this idea of Mark Scheifele making Team Canada. I still think that he should be there. He's big, he's strong, he protects the puck so well. His small area passing is phenomenal. He's jumping up like he did tonight. That first goal, the Dylan DeMello goal, is a perfect screen by Mark Scheifele. He scores the second goal of the game. His thumbprints have been all over the Jets' success so far this season. But if we're being honest with ourselves, the team that already went and won the Four Nations, how many guys are they going to cycle off that team and new guys in? And if you are, how do you choose between a Macklin Celebrini saying this guy is going to be dominating for Team Canada for years, let's get him in early and get his experience, while the Sidney Crosbys of the world are still there and the Connor McDavids are still in their prime? Or we don't like the way that those Tkachuk brothers ran over us there. Maybe we take Tom Wilson along and have him do that. Like, how much of a long shot is it for Mark Scheifele, as good as he's been, and people in Winnipeg know how valuable he'd be on that team, but with a roster that won gold, how many guys you're going to take off, and how do you get ahead of guys like that? And to be honest, let's just take those two players, Ken, and does Mark Scheifele get the nod ahead of those guys when Tom Wilson brings a unicorn kind of skill set and Macklin Celebrini is the future? Whereas if Mark Scheifele does get on this Olympic team, it's almost guaranteed it would be his last Olympic team.
Yeah, I mean, those are fair questions, and those are certainly probably considerations, but I just would put it this way. It's not a development program. Like, they're going there to win Olympic gold. I mean, so Celebrini will clearly be on the World Cup team or whatever the tournament's going to be called, Four Nations World Cup, whatever it's going to be in 2 years. That's obvious. For me, he doesn't have to be on the team this time around. He's definitely put himself into the conversation. And, we know Elliot Friedman reported it. He was in the conversation last time as well. But there's a lot of different things that we can look at here. Obviously, Anthony Cirelli, he's a guy that, we're not sure. Travis Konechny, I think he's probably, I would call him a long shot to make it. And I like the way that he plays. I just don't think he's had a particularly strong start. There are injury considerations. Mark Stone is on the shelf. How long is he going to be out in this week-to-week injury to what I think is his wrist? I think Celebrini, you could obviously make the case of why you'd want him to be there. And I'm not saying he won't be there. But I think that right now Celebrini is still a teenager and Scheifele is more of a finished product. So that's why you would give him the nod, I think. I think his ability to play on the wing, he's done it for Team Canada at World Championships in the past. I'm not saying obviously Celebrini probably could, but I do think that Mark would have a leg up on him in that scenario as well. And Robert Thomas is also in this conversation, even though
Yeah.
he left the game the other night here too. So yeah, I mean, we know also Team Canada likes continuity. Sean, you're 100% right in that scenario. Also, Wilson definitely, I think, is under consideration. There's 2 extra spots also, right? One up front,
Right.
one on the back end. So it's not necessarily a 1-for-1 scenario with what we're discussing. We're going to have to see. But again, if you're Mark Scheifele, you have done everything to put yourself in that position. I think that he is at the front of the line of those players. We also know he's at the front of the line because he was potentially going to be on the team if Sidney Crosby or Anthony Cirelli could not go when they were
Right.
dealing with injuries last year. So
Right. He's almost the automatic default.
to me, he's worked hard to be in that position. It's not like he could not be usurped into that position, but I think he already starts from a position of strength, and his start to the season has only helped him. That's 8 goals, 13 points in 9 games. And again, it's the two-way play. It's the other things. Doug Armstrong was here to see it. He's seen him plenty over the years. Mark has worked really hard at, improving his reputation, being a better two-way player, all of those things. But again, it's only the people making those decisions can tell us those answers. We're going to do our best to give our analysis of why it should be. But this is the same as every other year. Team Canada will have a ton of great choices, and there will be people who feel like they should have been on the team that won't be on the team. And again, ultimately, they're judged by whether they win gold or not in terms of whether that's a good decision or did you set out the best roster. And Sean, even when they win the gold medal, there's the debates over, did you have the best roster for that certain situation? And that's the beauty of, international hockey.
I got to say it again. Sammy was on the show, and I kind of hit a little bit. We talked behind the scenes. Sammy had worried that the United States were the more skilled of the 2 lineups that went to the 4 nations. And I don't know. I went and I said, okay, go best player and work your way down the list. Who's the best player on the States team? Are they better than Connor McDavid? Who's the second best player? Are they better than Nathan McKinnon? Just keep going down and down the list. The one thing I'll say is the U.S. has got to a place where it can ice as deep a team as it ever has before, but they still don't have that glut. What's happening right now is USA's hockey program. They've opened the door and they've crammed a whole bunch of people in there. And if you open the door, there's a bunch of people stuffed up against the door. In Canada, there are still people spilling out of that door into the hallway. Like someone brought up Nick Suzuki, we didn't even talk about in this situation here. Wyatt Johnston's got 10 points right now. And
Matthew Schaefer on the back, right?
Matthew Schaefer on the back end. John Tavares is up there and still doing, what he's doing. It's Brad Marchand's coming out, having a great year to start everything off. Like this is just, even Dylan Cousins is starting to have a good year, and I'm thinking poised for a breakout year in Ottawa. And he's a name that is way, way off the radar, right? So once again, if you're Team Canada, the hardest part of this is that it is impossible to make a team without leaving off someone who should be on that team. That's the job. You are going to start out getting it wrong because you are so deep. There are no wrong answers when it comes to guys being on the team. And yet there are wrong answers over and over again when it comes to cutting guys on the team. Okay, Ken, back to the Jets game and the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. What do you got?
It's a toughie for me, Sean. I don't know that I marked one. Did I send you one by text? I'm not 100% sure. No. Let's go keg save, and then I'll sort something out while we discuss.
Let's do keg save of the game. What did you have?
Lots of options, and I think actually the one tee off the bucket would be up there for me, but I can't think of a better one than the crease push across on Jack McBain. I think that was, for me, that's the best save of the game. There were plenty by Hellebuck and also by Vanacek on that 3 for $1 special there, the redirector off Taves, and then the Iafallo rebound, and then the secondary rebound into the glove as honorable mentions. But to me, it's the save on McBain as the is the best save of the game.
And you had liked the sneaky, was it the Logan Cooley shot?
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure. Yep.
Boy, those sneaky shots, it actually has me thinking, Ken, there's been a bunch of those this year where players have gone with those kind of sneaky whip shots to the top corner where, Connor Hellebuyck struggled in the playoffs last year, and he hasn't been susceptible to them so far this year. And the saves that he makes are usually redirected out of play, which is always a good sign, right? It's not hitting and dropping right in front of you for a rebound. Not only is he getting to those pucks, is Connor Hellebuyck, but he's eliminating the secondary threat. We didn't really even talk about him in this show. I thought he had a good night tonight. That is our hashtag the keg saves of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. It matters what you think. You should share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. Why? Well, if you do, you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 Fine Keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And the winner from our last show, that would be Jefferson Peters. Jefferson, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email, and I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 Fine Keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And Ken, that brings us full circle back to the We Got You Covered Johnson Group. Kenny and Renny, OG's play of the game. What do you got?
We could edit that out now, but let's go. Let's give it to Dylan DeMello. It's twofold for me. 4 block shots in the game, Sean. 22:39 of ice time. We've talked a ton about the Jets needing to step up with Dylan Sandberg out of the lineup, and obviously Josh Morrissey leading the way in that department each and every night for the Jets. And, saluting Josh for his 300th point. He had an unreal week in terms of the assists, racking up 2 more today to give him 300 in his career. But a Dylan DeMello clapper is going to be the got you covered. Dylan DeMello talked about the importance not only of elevating his 5-on-5 play, but he wanted to get back. He had consecutive seasons where he had career highs in points, and today he got himself his first goal of the year, and he moved himself up to 1 goal, 5 points in 9 games, which is great production for a guy who's known as more of a defensive defenseman.
No doubt.
So for me, I'm going to dish it out to him.
If you're going to get those first pairing minutes, it helps to do that. And I think it is a fine place to go with the We've Got You Covered Johnson Group play of the game when it's a player who typically hasn't, doesn't score a lot, hadn't had a goal in basically half of a season. When you need to launch the offense and get things going, and a guy who typically doesn't score goes out and does it, it's a great candidate for the Johnson Group. Kenny and Renny OG's Got You Covered play of the game. And that, of course, is your Johnson Group Got You Covered play of the game. And do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Ken, anything to say before we shut this down?
No, we'll be coming to you live from St. Paul, Minnesota after Tuesday's game between the Jets and the Wild, who will be looking to find their A game as well.
You're heading down there, Ken?
You, sir. Yep.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, well, I will be right here holding it down. You will be carrying the flag for Vittorio Rossi, and let's be honest, the entire KNR audience. But in between then and now, well, we'll just have a great Monday out there, everybody. And I will say this before we go. If you appreciate the conversations happening in this podcast, in this space, we implore you to appreciate the contributions made by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space for us. That's Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent, Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Ferlin, Flame and Comfort, Myers Pharmacy, the Johnson Group, and of course, the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We'll chat with you after the big game against the Minnesota Wild. Talk to you then, folks. Bye-bye.